This is Retire Hour.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement. And it's ever-changing because this year we have that extra senior bonus deduction. And I had a really eye-opening meeting last week with a couple who are both over the age of 65. And they came in curious about these new tax deductions in the One Big Beautiful Bill. They heard about this new senior bonus deduction, and they wanted to know, most important, how it might benefit or even affect them. They also wanted to explore Roth conversions. They think taxes will be higher in the future. But their previous financial advisor didn't offer tax advice. And that's where our team-based approach makes all the difference. So I went down the hall and I grabbed Joshua Cicora, one of our CPAs, and we reviewed their tax return from 2024. What we saw stood out almost immediately. Get this right, $55,000 of interest income that they had on their tax return last year. So we were having a conversation with them and found this was simply from certificate deposits, CDs at the bank. And in fact, this $700,000 was sitting in those CDs. And like many retirees, they wanted certainty. They didn't want to risk it in the stock market. But the downside here that a lot of people don't realize because they're not getting tax advice was all that interest, the $55,000, was hitting them on their tax return every year. And what it was doing was pushing them up into a higher tax bracket. So Joshua, one of our CPAs, he asked this really powerful question. And we ask a lot of questions here because everyone's situation is different. But the question he asked was, do you need that interest income to live off every year? And they thought about it for a second. They said, well, no, we just want to keep it growing because we think inflation's going, but we don't want to lose it to the market. And that answer changed everything. Because if you don't need the income now, then why create the tax liability year after year? If you like paying taxes, you can pay some of mine. So we showed them how to restructure that investment for certainty, similar to a CD, without the unnecessary taxable income hitting them every year. And that opens the door for them to be a perfect candidate for Roth conversions. But the catch is it's going to be next year, 2026. Roth conversions move money from tax-deferred accounts like an IRA or 401k into a Roth IRA that can grow tax-free. But here's the deal. Timing is everything. And if we lower their taxable income by eliminating this $55,000 of unneeded bank interest, it gives them the room to convert more dollars from those IRAs, 401ks, without bumping them into a higher tax bracket or triggering penalties like higher Medicare premiums through IRMA. Most people, though, don't get this coordinated planning when they go see their advisor. And I'm telling you, the advisor probably ignores your taxes. Their previous advisor had never reviewed their tax return. And it just highlights the importance of why retirees need a team. Taxes, investments, healthcare, and estate planning, all connected. Decisions all in one area, and if there's going to be ripple effects, we see that. That's why we use our Core 4 report. We look at the retirement income, estate planning needs, other risks like healthcare, and taxes, all in one coordinated report. So if you're wondering, am I paying more in taxes than I should? All you have to do is take that first step. And that step one is a 15-minute introductory phone call with one of the advisors here at the firm. It's quick and easy, and all you have to do is just call 833-44-CORE4, and there's someone that will get you scheduled for that step one. You do it by phone, or you can go visit the website, retirementhelp.com, or again, that 24/7 phone number is 833-442-6734, or again, retirementhelp.com. So you want to take that first step and see how much better your retirement could be with a coordinated team. But I want to jump back to this couple that I met with. After Joshua, one of our CPAs, and I showed them this strategy of restructuring the certificate of deposits or the CDs, they were blown away. For years, they've been paying taxes on income they didn't need to live on. But no one, and I mean no one, had been able to put the two together because a financial advisor is not looking at the tax return. And of course, the tax person's not talking with the financial advisor. So they left relieved, knowing they had a roadmap. They would benefit from the senior bonus deduction and save potentially thousands through smart Roth conversions. So here's the deal. If you're listening to this or you're watching this, if you're over the age of 65, you really need to know about these deductions. And if you're sitting on an investment creating taxable income that you don't need to live off of at this moment, you could be missing a pretty cool planning opportunity. So do me a favor. Don't do yourself a favor too. Don't let another year slip by. Take control of your taxes and your retirement future today. And you do that by calling to schedule that step one. That 15-minute phone call with us, you can call 833-44-CORE4 or visit retirementhelp.com, and we'll see if you could benefit from tax plannings like Roth conversions and the senior bonus deduction. That first step, really, it could change the trajectory of your retirement, so don't put it off. And here's the deal. Retirement, it's not just about the savings. It's not just about the investments. Really, what it's about is coordinating them with a team that can talk taxes, healthcare, and estate planning. And that's what we do every day. And that's where we're going to help people. And that's why we do what we do. So don't be like that couple that has a lot of money out there sitting in CDs at the bank, aggravating your tax situation. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more right after this.
Welcome back into Retire Hour. I'm Joshua Cicora, taking over for the rest of the episode after Matt Goolsby's been called away to emergency conversations in Washington about the government shutdown. We'll talk more about that in the next segment, but for now, first, let's continue the conversation with Danny Goolsby, financial advisor here in the Wichita office. Danny, what you got for me today?
Well, I want to talk with the audience about some of the myths that go into retirement planning. So you hear all these commercials out there that one of the biggest ones is, do I have enough to retire on? Is my nest egg big enough? Will it last? Have I saved enough money? And so let's talk about that just a bit. We hear it all the time. You work hard, you contribute to your 401k, you build a decent nest egg, and you assume by the time you retire that everything's going to be taking care of itself at that point. But here's the truth about some of the financial institutions and some of the advertising that we hear a lot, whether it's on the radio, TV, or the internet, that they don't really talk enough about. And so let's talk about that. So yes, have I saved enough in my nest egg for retirement? That's certainly something that's key to talk about, but it's only half of the equation. It's only half of the problem. The other part of that is making sure that your money lasts the rest of your life. So if you've saved a significant amount of money in your working years and you retire, hypothetically, for example, at 65, and then you pass away at 75, do you really have a problem? Probably not.
Probably.
Because you will have enough money between 65 and 70 to get you to 75. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. On the other hand, the first problem you have is if you live too long. So if you retire at 65 and you live to 95, but you run out of money at 75 or 80, do you have a problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sure think so.
Yeah. I mean, that would make those last years of your life pretty lean, right? So life expectancy is increasing at a pretty fast pace at this moment. And that's great news for us as a culture, I guess. But it also means that as we live longer as a culture, it means that your money has to last longer too. So a lot of times, if we're living a longer lifespan, that means your money has to last 25 or 30 years or maybe even longer into retirement. That's a long time. And a lot of people, I can tell you, have not planned for their savings to stretch that long. Most retirement plans aren't built to support 3 decades of living expenses, especially when those unexpected things pop up along the way. So number one is have I accounted for how long I'm going to live? Number two, the problem is your expenses don't retire just when you do. One of the things that we talk about all the time in the conference room, and I know that because I bring this in with you at a time with clients, is before I retire, should I pay off my house?
We talk about that a lot.
Yeah, and people, it gets into, I want to take a big lump sum out of my retirement account to pay off my house so that I can have a mortgage-free retirement. And while that sounds good, and I know it's a case-by-case basis, but while that sounds good to have a mortgage-free retirement, your expenses don't retire when the mortgage is retired. You still have to pay property taxes. You still have to pay maintenance and upkeep.
Oh, I don't know about you, but I've grown accustomed to having dinner every night, and that expense doesn't retire.
Yeah, sadly, I like to eat regular too. So we all get into that. But a lot of people, when they think that they're going to retire and some of their cash flow is going to go down in retirement, that's not necessarily the case. What happens if you want to travel? Well, more time means more spending. So if you want to spend more time traveling, it means more spending. I often will ask people this. I'll say, of the 7 days that make up a work week right now, while you're working, which of those days do you normally spend the most money? And most of the time I will get the answer, well, it's when I'm not working. So usually the weekend, Saturdays, Sundays, or whatever is the work or the weekend for those people.
Yeah.
Because they have time on their hand.
Right.
That's when they pay the bills. That's when they go shopping. That's when they go on a brief vacation or a vacation, what have you. So they spend more time while they're working on their days off, spending more money. Guess what? When you retire,
it's a big, long weekend.
It's a big, long weekend. I've had lots of people that are retired that are clients saying, you know what? And they'll tease. We get into a little bit of a conversation. They'll say, every day's Saturday for me. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what day it is on the calendar. I don't know. I'm lost because every day is Saturday. Well, that's great, but it also presents more opportunities to spend more money.
Yep.
And so, again, your expenses don't go down just because you've retired.
Right. And one of the things we'll talk about in the conference room is what does it take to run your household? And I know when people go to our workshops that we host around the metro area, everybody walks out with one of those folders, right? And there's a budget worksheet in there. How many times have we heard people come in and said, well, I thought I knew what it cost to run my house until I tried filling this out, and it took me a little longer than I expected.
Sometimes people will look at that exercise as, I'm afraid what I will find out, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Other people will say, man, that was very liberating because now I know. But you are so right. When we hear people that have gone through the trouble of filling that out, usually it's like, wow, that's a bigger number than I thought it was.
That's right.
And so, again, you want to know what those expenses are. And just because you're retired doesn't necessarily mean your expenses go down. In fact, with more time on your hands, some of those expenses may go up.
Yeah. And, sometimes when we meet people, they already have financial advisors they've been working with, right? And so I have to wonder in those situations, if that was new information for them, how does that advisor put together an income plan if the advisor doesn't know what their household expenses are because the client doesn't know what their household expenses are?
Right. And so I'm going to say in a jokingly manner, it's almost the blind leading the blind because how many times have you been in a situation in whatever part of your life where I don't know what questions to ask because I don't know, I've never been here before. There's not a dress rehearsal.
Right. We've learned that a lot lately.
Yeah, that's true. So let's talk about really quick about problem number 3, and that's market volatility. Market volatility can really destroy decades of savings. And while you're working, a market blip may be a little uncomfortable, but it's completely different when you have a market retracement or market pullback or market crash, however you want to characterize it, when you're retired. Because now when you're retired, you're wanting that nest egg to supplement. Well, when your nest egg goes down because of the stock market, there's less money to supplement your income with.
That's right. And that's a big deal when you're trying to coast on your nest egg for 20, 30 years. There's something you talk about in the conference room I'm going to call problem number 4, and it's how money lost to taxes never comes back. In that last one, you're talking about market volatility. The market usually comes back eventually, but you tell people all the time that if they lose money on taxes, which you always do, those dollars never come back.
They never return.
Yeah. And so, clearly that's something near and dear to my heart as a tax advisor. But when people come in and they're trying to ask if they're going to make it through retirement, that's a big piece as well, right?
Yeah, and so if you're not looking at these other pieces, it's not so simplistic as to say, did I save enough? It's these other pieces of the puzzle that make that difference. You want to make sure that you cover your basic living expenses with income that's going to be really predictable, really guaranteed, if you will. Social Security is really popular for retirees because it's predictable when it comes in. You want to make sure that you reduce your reliance on market-dependent assets. So therefore, if the market goes up, the market goes down, it doesn't necessarily affect your income. And you want to make sure that you gain the confidence to enjoy retirement instead of trying to fear the unknown. And so that's kind of what I would want to share in this segment.
Yeah, yeah. And so people listening in, if you're worried about your retirement plan, or like we're going to talk about in the next segment, how this government shutdown is going to affect you. A lot of these questions can start to be answered if you just reach out for a 15-minute introductory phone call to start exploring some of those questions. You can do that by giving us a call at 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-442-6734. Or you could go visit us at retirementhelp.com. You could book that 15-minute call there and request your Core 4 report. Well, stay tuned for the next segment. We'll be talking more about the government shutdown with our good friend here, Danny Goolsby, and we'll be right back. Joshua Cicora taking over for the rest of the episode today. Just to be clear to everybody who's listening in, we record this show on Wednesday. Today's Wednesday, October 1st, day one of the government shutdown. Now, you're listening to this usually Saturday, Sunday, I believe, and you know, with the way things work, this could be all wrapped up by now. If that's the case, just pull your car over, grab yourself a new beverage, catch us after the break. But if we're still clicking along with the government shutdown, Danny Goolsby, financial advisor here in Wichita downtown office, let's start talking a little bit about what's going to happen. What should people expect to see?
Well, so when the government shuts down and they kick this can around the media stories all the time. Well, we are actually now in a government shutdown now. Some are calling for a prolonged shutdown because they're so divisive in politics right now. Some are calling saying, well, this might be a really short. I mean, so I guess no really knows how long this is going to be. But to your question of what's affected and what's not affected. So the good news is if you're retired, you don't have to necessarily worry about your Social Security benefits ceasing. Those are not going to stop.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about maybe your Medicare or your Medicaid, whichever you're on, if you're retired. You don't have to worry about that stopping. So those are good things.
Those are good things. But what people might want to worry about is if you're not on Social Security yet and you're applying, you know, people who are receiving benefits, it keeps clicking along because it's a very automated process. Getting signed up is not super automated. And so they're saying that there could be processing delays, especially if you have complications in your filing strategy.
So let's go back in time just a few short years ago to COVID.
Uh-huh.
Remember when you would call and you would get an echo on the other end of the phone? So when you go down into skeleton staffs,
Mm-hmm.
so then today, during the government shutdown, you're right. It's going to make for longer delays because there's no one there to process your paperwork.
That's right.
If you had a pension and you were trying to apply, if you're a government employee and you have a government pension, that's going to slow down. I hear those are really speedy to begin with as far as the process of filing for a pension benefit.
I think that's tongue in cheek, right? Am I picking up what you're laying down?
There's a little sarcasm was laid in there. Yes,
Yeah,
so I'm glad.
yeah.
But so those are things that you're certainly going to see things slow down. Here's another one. So here we are, as you said, October 1st. We are recording today. One also gets announced in the month of October is the cost of living adjustment for Social Security for 2026. Well, if Congress is in a shutdown or the government's in a shutdown, then that cost of living announcement could be delayed as well, which is going to set off another set of dominoes in the future.
Well, along the same lines, isn't there economic data due out this week that the Federal Reserve uses to sharpen up their crystal ball?
Well, and there you go to that point. So there is a big jobs number that's going to be reported in a normal world, quote unquote, on Friday morning. I think it's at 7:30 our time. But if there's a government shutdown, then yes, that job report won't be announced, and therefore the Federal Reserve is using some of these metrics to determine whether or not they can cut interest rates or justify cutting interest rates. If this jobs report, if this metric doesn't get announced because of the government shutdown, then we may not get interest rates to be cut.
Yeah. Danny, this is getting a little depressing. Let's talk a little bit about some good news. Mail. It's going to keep clicking along. Now, downside there, those bills are going to keep coming in, right?
And that's good news, you said?
Well, I started off thinking it was good news, and now I'm a little iffy about it. Airport security. Those folks are deemed essential. They keep clicking along there. Government employees, well, that's not good news otherwise, because they're all being furloughed, right?
That's right.
And so there's going to be missed paychecks there, and that's really unfortunate. National parks got closed. That's unfortunate.
If you're on a military pension, though, what happens? Military pensions, they still get paid.
Just like Social Security,
Yes.
It's pretty automated. It just keeps clicking along. Weather forecasts keep going along, which is important because, it's just, all right, it's nice knowing the weather, but that's usually for a lot of other things that make a big deal. Folks out on the East Coast, it's hurricane season. They might like to know when those are coming in. And so this affects a lot of people in different ways.
I have clients that will say that, one spouse may be on Social Security currently. One spouse may be wanting to get onto Social Security. And so that appointment that they have to go out to the Social Security office to go through that filing process, well, that office is closed. Mm-hmm. So they can't even file for benefits. So there's not even a delay. There's a you can't file. So
Yeah. And then, when big things happen like this, government shutdowns, if in this specific example, but as other big picture things happen, the stock market likes to throw an opinion in there.
Well, sure. And so the stock market is all about fear and news. And so if there's unknown going on, the stock market could get really volatile in a very short amount of time. It could not. It depends on how long this government shutdown lasts.
Well, awesome. Well,
Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
In preparing for the segment, the other piece I found out, do you know who else still gets paid during the shutdown?
Who's that?
Congressmen and women.
There's something wrong with that statement.
There is a certain level of irony there. Now, they can voluntarily refuse their paycheck, but it's a list and not a 100% list of who's doing that.
So that's not necessarily the left or the right, or that is the political system.
Yeah, and we come in, we talk with people about stuff like this all the time, right? In these appointments we talk about, and people, come in, they're all over the place politically. I always like to tell them my political alignment is green. Green is in jaded.
Yes.
And
I thought you were going to say money.
Well, you can work it that way too. And so when people come in, they're worried about these things. And if you're listening in now and you're worried about your retirement plans, this government shutdown, how the changes in the stock market are going to impact your retirement plan, we can start to help unravel some of these complicated issues if you just reach out with us for a 15-minute introductory phone call. You can do that by giving us a call at 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-442-6734. Or check us out on over at retirementhelp.com to book that call. Stay tuned with us after the break, and we'll be picking it up with Trey Bossa for Medicare. Welcome back into Retire Hour. I've got Trey Bossa, Medicare healthcare advisor with Market Medicare Advisors here in the studio with me. Trey, after that last super cheery segment, I'm sure you're going to pump us up even more.
Oh boy, you have no idea. Today, like you said, is October 1st, the beginning of the fourth quarter of the year. And this is where I start to sit down and talk with all my clients about tax planning. And it's interesting because I'm not the tax guy. I bring up this topic with my Medicare clients because it's important for them to be aware of, hey, we're going to enter this new year. We're going to possibly be upcharged for your Medicare Parts B and D premiums. And that's all because of the income-related monthly adjustment amount. Today, this quarter is the perfect time to sit down and start looking at that stuff because you look at it now and it's going to affect you 2 years from now. Just bringing it up to folks, addressing it, like making sure that they know it's a thing, that they could be upcharged is really important when it comes to some more vital planning.
Well, yeah, who doesn't love paying more for the same thing?
It's unfortunate that a lot of people get hit with this just because of their higher earning years of their career, inheritances, the larger sales of assets, houses, things like that. All of a sudden, they're really enjoying it. They're paying taxes for it that year. They're really enjoying that money. But then it's going to cost them again in a couple of years.
Yes, yeah. This is something when I'm working with our clients and we're talking about tax planning, we almost always bring this up. I say almost always because if you're under 63, it's really not much of a concern because of that 2-year lag you were talking about. And so when we talk about it, it's less about what's going on inside your Medicare, more about, hey, if we make these set of decisions, it's going to cost you this bit extra here in 2 years. What I like about when we bring it up in that tax planning conversation is we look at that cost in comparison to tax costs, because then it puts some context around that decision, right?
Right.
And so maybe tell people a little bit how the mechanics of that works. I mean, it's a 2-year window to that.
Right. So the income related monthly adjustment amount, or as we like to call it, Aunt Irma, the IRMA upcharge is going to be based off of your tax return, your modified adjusted gross income from 2 years ago. Now, like you and Danny were talking about, the COLA is supposed to come out sometime later this year. So are those numbers, those thresholds, and how much people can be making on those tax returns without getting upcharged. So I sit down, and I'm about to sit down with all of my clients and just bring it back to their attention. Say, hey, here's the new numbers. This is what you need to look out for. And all of a sudden, we could have this conversation of like, oh, maybe I did go over this threshold. Okay, if you did go over the threshold, that's okay. It's not going to apply to you until maybe 2 years from now, where the threshold will increase. But now we have a good idea. You made X amount this year with your modified adjusted gross income. That's something we'll have to look for in the future.
And now, so when we talk, I'm the tax guy, so I try everything back to taxes. Funny enough. So when we talk about taxes, we'll talk about, well, if you go into the next tax bracket, it's only the dollars in that bracket that get taxed at that rate. Does that same idea apply to IRMA?
No. So it's the modified adjusted gross income, and then it determines if you have an upcharge. You have that upcharge for every month of the future year for both Parts B and Part D.
Oh, so you're saying, unlike taxes, which is just impacts your last few dollars, if you're $1 into that next level of upcharge, you're in it all in.
Yes, for an entire calendar year.
Yikes. That has got to be an uncomfortable surprise for people when they aren't working with a team that gives them advanced warning of that.
And I think that's what a lot of people like about us. When, say, if they had another advisor before me, they didn't get that information. It's because, number one, they didn't have that confidence to give that information. They didn't have the team backing them up.
You know, this is one of the places I know Matt Goolsby, our normal host, likes to poke on a bit, because whose responsibility is it to be aware of that? Is it the financial advisor's responsibility, who may not know their income, may not be involved with Medicare, so therefore may not be aware of those limits? Is it my job as the tax advisor, who is not involved at your Medicare decisions at all, to make you aware of that? Is it your job as the Medicare person?
It's really a toss-up because it bleeds into so many sectors of retirement. I think we're all doing our due diligence, just talking about it, bringing it up, but we're taking it a step further. We're having this conversation, and we're trying to do something actionable about it. Because, like we said, it's a 2-year gap. Mm-hmm. You have to plan 2 years in advance.
Yeah. So what I'm picking up you're saying is that it's not any one of our responsibilities, and that's why we work as a team, so that we together address this all for our clients. Because the average person has never even heard of this before.
Wholeheartedly agree. It's a very foreign concept that folks don't know or understand when they're even first enrolling into Medicare.
Yeah. One last question before we have to wrap up our time together.
Oh man.
I know it's a bummer. So we talked last segment about government shutdown. You've been talking about it's getting to be your favorite time of year, not in Christmas necessarily, but open enrollment time. Is there an impact in between the two? Is government shutdown going to impact open enrollment?
So there are already plans approved by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and a lot of the enrollments that we're going to do are actually going to be with private insurance companies. That's not to say that there won't be any delay whenever we do put in applications, that there isn't like some sort of check from the government, from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. But I was thinking about enrollments for new Medicare beneficiaries, new Social Security beneficiaries. The government's going to bare bones staff, and there's still a lot of folks retiring nowadays trying to get those benefits. I can't say how far behind we might fall.
Yeah. So, if you're listening into this and maybe you're thinking, hey, I've never heard of this IRMA thing before, or you're concerned about when you get signed up for Medicare, you're going through open enrollment, what plan's going to be the right solution for you? We can start to help you unwind some of these issues. And all it takes to get started is that 15-minute introductory phone call to get those questions start to get answered. You can do that by giving us a call, 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-442-6734. Or visit us over at retirementhelp.com. Book that 15-minute call or request your Core 4 report. Well, stay tuned for the next segment. We're talking about estate planning with the Eidelman Law Firm. We'll be right back after this. Well, welcome back into Retire Hour. I've got Alex Robinson with the Eidelman Law Firm here in studio with me. Alex, how are your parents doing?
Oh, they're good. They're good. Yeah, we'll go with that.
All right. So good to see you're not affected by the government shutdown. You're still coming to work.
I'm here every day.
All right. Well, what'd you bring for me today?
Well, I wanted to talk about, if you're listening to the show, you probably have parents who are retirement age. I think that's a pretty fair bet.
That is a fair bet.
And if that's the case, you need to have hard conversations with them about what their estate plan looks like. Maybe not get into the nitty gritty, but I have talked to several people in the past couple of weeks who they're like, oh yeah, my dad did his own will, we're covered, or like my mom said that they don't need to have a plan because it's, I'm on the bank account and I'll just take care of all the other kids. Or, I've seen some variation of those types of things like 5 or 6 times in the past couple of weeks. And it's a ticking time bomb for their families.
When they say things like this, and I can just tell by the way you're saying it, it didn't ever end well. Do you wince when they say it? Do you say, well, let's dig into that a little more?
Yeah, I definitely try to dig in and give them the information that they can pass on to their parents. But, that's a case-by-case basis. And really the reality is at some point during our lifetime, we switch from our parents being our caregivers to us taking care of our parents. And that's different with every situation, and it's different from family to family. But at some point that happens almost all of the time. And in those situations, you need to be having those conversations. What happens if something happens to you, Dad? Does mom have the ability to take care of you? Does she have the ability to make healthcare decisions for you? Can she access your IRA? One of the ones I hear a lot is, oh, well, my dad says I'm the beneficiary on his IRA, so I'm covered. Well, that's true if he passes away, but if he's in the hospital or, has dementia and they need money for his care, you being the beneficiary of that IRA doesn't do anything for you because you can't talk to the IRA. You can't get information about the IRA. You certainly can't make withdrawals from the IRA on his behalf without having a power of attorney. And if you don't have that, you have to go to court and get a guardianship and conservatorship, which is a lot of time and a lot of money.
Wow. So it sounds like people have some beginnings of good information, good intentions, but they don't have a cohesive plan that is addressing not just they passed, the big problem, but there's a bunch of little problems along the way.
Yeah, I mean, what I find a lot of times is people from the generations I'm talking about are very self-reliant. They don't want to spend money, and they don't know what they don't know. And that's all of us. And so they think, oh, I've got this will, so and so changed their last name because they got married or they got divorced, or I decided I want to do something else, and they scratch something out on their will. Now that whole will's invalid, and they just don't have the information to know that. And so if no one catches it before their death, now all of a sudden they don't have that estate planning vehicle that they thought they had, and now they're spending a lot of money trying to unwind what's going on and figure out who gets what.
Earlier in the show we talked to Danny Goolsby, financial advisor, and he was saying about how people, you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes people are afraid to ask questions because they're worried about what they're going to uncover. In this case, it's a very similar idea, except nobody likes talking about their own mortality.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable situation to be in. It's something that people don't like doing. Sometimes I get told all the time, I don't like attorneys. And that's okay, because that's
you don't
fair.
either?
Right, yeah. And sometimes they've had bad experiences in the past, and if they just come and sit down with us, they're going to understand we do things a little bit differently. We're not making fun of people if they don't know what they're talking about. What I tell people all the time is, if I came to your job and tried to do what you do, I would not know what I'm doing, and I would look kind of dumb. And that's okay, because I've, practiced in another field.
Yeah. And so, we approach a lot of things around here lighthearted, and that's because we deal with a lot of very serious, very heavy topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we try to balance it out, which makes it more palatable to go through. And so these estate plans, setting up an estate plan is expensive, right? Mm-hmm. But the only thing more expensive than setting up an estate plan is not setting up a estate plan and then making your loved ones, who you're supposed to be leaving this blessing for, having to unwind and deal with complications. 9 times out of 10, these problems are going to cost them somehow to the government, whether it's court proceedings, whether it's getting that conservatorship you were talking about, paying more in taxes. These are all the side effects of a bad plan.
And it adds so much trauma and so much stress to an already very stressful and traumatic situation.
Yeah. Not all costs are financial costs, right? Sometimes there's emotional costs or stress costs that people have to deal with, and you can't really quantify those. You're really not going to be here to deal with it, because these are all either you're incapacitated or no longer with us. So you're not there to comfort them or help deal with the situation, which is why having a good comprehensive estate plan is so valuable.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like the last act of caring that you can do for your loved ones. Having that plan that works is an invaluable gift for them.
Ooh, I like that. A last act of caring. If you're listening to this conversation and you're thinking, well, I've got a will set up, or I've got a trust, but it hasn't been changed in 27 years, maybe you need to revisit that last act of caring. And to get started on trying to tackle that heavy and complicated issue, sometimes all it takes to get that ball rolling is a 15-minute introductory call, so you can start to get some of those questions answered. And you can do that by giving us a call at 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-442-6734. Visit us over at retirementhelp.com. Book that 15-minute call. See some of these past episodes. Listen to the things we've talked about. Or you can even request your Core 4 report and start learning some of these things that you're not aware of. Well, after the break, we'll be back with everybody's favorite tax advisor, Joshua Cicora, kind of talking about what I've been up to these last few weeks. And stay tuned after that. Welcome back into Retire Hour. I'm your host, Joshua Cicora, filling in for the rest of the show. And in studio with us today, we have everybody's favorite tax advisor, Joshua Cicora. Sorry, folks. The plan was we were going to come in and start talking about some of the things I've been up to the last few weeks. Extension season's wrapping up, and that's when most tax people, sit around, take some vacations, relax, start gearing up for next tax season. But unfortunately, that's not how things work around here. Really, this time of year, I'm about as busy as I am during tax season, which sounds a little crazy because there's no filing deadlines really coming up or tax forms that need to get dealt with. So what's got us here so busy? And the answer to that is that we're talking with a sizable percentage, if not all of our clients right now, starting to talk about the new tax law, making some tax plans, seeing how this new law is going. Sorry, let me take a step back. When I say new tax law, we're talking about this One Big Beautiful Bill Act, OB3, that got enacted back in July. And we're starting to visit with people and actually taking a look and seeing how this law is going to impact their individual situations. We've talked, in this show, on other venues, we've had a Facebook Live event, and we've talked about in general what these new issues are going to be and how it's going to impact people in general. But we actually sit down with our clients this time of year and start to visit how this new law is going to impact their unique situation. Now, this might seem like it's a big deal to start doing. And, how are we fitting this in with all the other things we've been doing? But to be honest, this is something we do every year for our clients here, because unless you're making a game plan intentionally on how your taxes are going to play out, you're just at the whim of whatever happens during the course of the year as you're living out your year. And so unless you sit down as the year starts to wind down, which this is the beginning of that wind down. I mean, we've talked all show about how today's, Wednesday, October 1st, start of the fourth quarter, start of now we're all looking towards the end of the year, not just for holiday season, getting together with family and friends, but we're visiting our friends here, our clients, as we come in and we start looking to see, we look to see how this new tax law is going to impact everybody's individual situation. How is that going to play into their tax return? We talk about what's happened this year that made it different than last year in their situation. Do they get raises, or did they turn on Social Security? Did they retire? Did this, that, or the other thing happen? And what's going to play in from that? Once we establish what the year looks like, we put the tax law to it. And we say, we talk about how, okay, well, based on all the things we've talked about, here's what we think your tax return is going to look like. When we meet people for the first time, especially during tax season, before their taxes are done, a big piece of fear and uncertainty and doubt is what that tax return is going to look like. Everybody just kind of assumes it's going to be just like the prior year, but no 2 years are ever the same. And especially this year where there's new tax law in play. So everybody's situation is going to end up looking a little bit differently. And then once we kind of decide what the year is going to look like and talk to you about how you feel about that, are you okay if this is your return, how that's going to pan out? And if you're not, Kim, is there anything we can do to make changes in this year to get a different answer this year? And this is the next piece, is what people have told us they really find value in, is we look for places not necessarily to save on taxes in the current year, but try to drive out tax savings over the long term. Is there a pot of money that's got some growth to it that we can look at addressing and seeing if we can deal with some of that growth, but not necessarily have a tax impact to it? Or, a lot of people we meet with, they've worked for years, they've saved for years, but they've saved in ways that have never had the taxes addressed. And so just like we were talking with Danny earlier in the show, one of the big things that impacts retirement is money lost to taxes. So can we deal with some of those taxes now while you're early in retirement, so that when you're in later stages of retirement, not that, for going from 65 to 75, but when we're talking that 75 to 95 window, is there things we can do so that you've got money there that's completely free of taxes, so that should you need it, or when you need it, not should, when you need it, you can start drawing on it and not having a tax consequence, further depleting and putting strain on that nest egg. And how do we make all these things come together so that as the person on the other side of the table, the client, then gets satisfaction and comfort knowing that they've got a plan put together that's going to address all these different needs, but they're doing it now early on in retirement to get those plans put together. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, nobody's ever talked to me about a tax plan. Nobody's ever talked to me about what my return's going to look like, or what can I do to have a better retirement, not in the next 10 years, but in the next 20 or 30 years. Sometimes all it takes to get started on that is a 15-minute introductory call. You can do that by giving us a call, 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-442-6734. Or go on over to our website, retirementhelp.com. You can do things, you can book that 15-minute phone call there. You can go watch past episodes. You can send us a question. We will sometimes take episodes and answer those questions on air. You can also request your Core 4 report, where we start to look at your situation, uncover some of these hidden problems and things that are going to cause issues as you go into that retirement. And it's better, uncover these problems now, today, while you can still make changes. Because, if you're looking 10 years down the road, it may be too late to make a change. Or if you're talking about your estate plan, we're never guaranteed tomorrow. So it's important to take advantage of these things today while you can make decisions and make those changes. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'll catch you right back here next.
This show is presented by Market Investment Group, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor that only conducts business in jurisdictions where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean that the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. The firm is not engaged in the practice of law or accounting. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the show's publication and are subject to change. The information presented is not an offer to buy or sell or a solicitation of any offer to buy or sell any of the securities discussed. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Any legal or tax information provided in this show is general in nature. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Annuity and life insurance guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. If you withdraw money from or surrender your contract within a certain time after investing, the insurance company may assess a surrender charge. Withdrawals may be subject to tax penalties and income taxes. Persons selling annuities and other insurance products receive compensation for these transactions. These commissions are separate and distinct from fees charged for advisory services. Insurance products also contain additional fees and expenses. Social Security rules and regulations are subject to change at any time. Always consult with your local Social Security office before acting upon any information provided herein. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. This is not endorsed by the U.S. government or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-Medicare to get information on all your options. All client or prospective client names have been changed to protect the identities of the individuals discussed. All rights reserved.